You've done this 1,000 times without thinking about it. Standing in line, standing at a wedding, standing guard, standing on a stage, standing at attention. It feels like nothing. It feels like rest. But here's something almost nobody tells you. Standing still, just standing, doing nothing else, can kill you. Not standing for a few minutes, not standing while you shift your weight and walk around. Standing rigid, motionless for long enough under the wrong conditions. And it's not exhaustion that gets you. It's not exposure. It's your own blood turning against you. This is the story of orthostatic collapse, a mechanism your circulatory system was never designed to survive without help. A threshold soldiers and guards and choir singers have crossed for centuries without anyone explaining why, and a physiological trap that's hiding inside one of the most ordinary postures a human body can hold. But to understand why standing still is dangerous, you first need to understand what your body is actually doing when you stand. Because most people think gravity is a minor inconvenience. It's not. Not when it comes to blood. Your circulatory system moves roughly 5 liters of blood through your body every minute, and a huge part of that job depends on movement. Every time you take a step, the muscles in your calves contract and squeeze the veins running through your legs, pushing blood back up toward your heart against gravity. This is called the skeletal muscle pump, and it's doing a job your heart cannot do alone. Your heart pumps blood out. It's the muscle pump that helps bring it back. When you stand still, completely still, that pump switches off. Nothing is squeezing those veins, and gravity starts pulling blood downward into your legs and just leaving it there.
And when that pump switches off, something has to give. Doctors have a name for what happens next. It's called venous pooling. And it's been documented in medicine for well over a century, long before anyone understood exactly why. Here's what's actually happening inside you. Without the muscle pump working, blood collects in the veins of your legs. Up to 500 to 800 milliliters of it can end up trapped below your waist within just a few minutes of standing still. That might not sound like much, but your entire blood volume is only around 5 liters. Losing that much circulating volume to your legs is like siphoning off 10 to 15% of the blood your heart actually needs to work with. Your body notices immediately. Tiny sensors in your neck and chest called baroreceptors are constantly monitoring blood pressure, and when they detect it dropping, they send out an alarm. Your heart rate climbs. Your blood vessels constrict, trying to squeeze the shrinking volume of blood hard enough to keep pressure up. For a while, this compensation works. Your body is remarkably good at buying itself time, but it's a losing battle if you don't move, because the pooling keeps getting worse, and the compensation system has limits, and there is a specific point, a threshold, where those limits run out. So what is that number? What does it actually mean for your body? Roughly 3 to 15 minutes. That's the window, depending on the person, the heat, hydration, and health, before the brain runs out of options, because your brain is the organ that suffers first and worst when blood pressure falls. Since it has almost no ability to store its own energy reserves, it needs a constant pressurized supply of blood every second. When that pressure drops below a critical level and your compensation mechanisms have already maxed out heart rate and vessel constriction, your brain does something drastic. It triggers a faint, technically called vasovagal syncope, dropping you to the ground. And this, strangely enough, is actually your brain trying to save you. Once you're horizontal, gravity stops working against you. Blood redistributes back toward your head, and consciousness usually returns within seconds. Fainting is a safety mechanism, but that safety mechanism only works if you're free to fall. And that is exactly where this stops being a curiosity and becomes something genuinely dangerous.
Because if you faint while freestanding with nothing holding you upright, you fall. Your body goes horizontal and blood pressure recovers. But there are places where the body is prevented from falling, and that is where standing still stops being uncomfortable and starts being lethal. Military parades have documented this for decades. Soldiers standing at attention for extended periods, especially in heat in dress uniforms, sometimes locking their knees to stay perfectly still, faint by the dozens at ceremonial events around the world. It happens so often that armies actually train for it. But the real danger isn't the feint itself. It's what happens when a soldier locks their knees before fainting. Locking the knees keeps the body rigid, which means when consciousness starts to fade, The body doesn't collapse and go horizontal the way it's supposed to. It stays upright, propped by its own skeleton while blood pressure keeps crashing. The brain gets no relief. In rare, well-documented cases, prolonged fainting while still upright has led to seizure-like activity, and in extreme circumstances, cardiac arrest, because the compensation system that was supposed to buy a few minutes gets pushed for far longer than it was ever built to handle. This is precisely why ceremonial guards, the ones outside royal palaces and government buildings around the world, are trained with a specific countermeasure: subtle, continuous movement, flexing the toes inside their boots, gently rocking weight between the balls and heels of their feet, engaging small muscles just enough to keep the skeletal muscle pump alive without visibly breaking formation. It looks like discipline. It's actually damage control against their own circulatory system. But here's the part that should genuinely change how you think about this. Heat makes everything about this process happen faster and harder. In hot conditions, your blood vessels near the skin dilate to help you lose heat, which pulls even more blood volume away from your core and toward the surface, on top of what's already pooling in your legs. Combine that with dehydration, which is common in heat, and your total blood volume shrinks at the exact moment your body needs every drop of it to maintain pressure. This is why military and public health data both show fainting incidents at outdoor ceremonies, marching events, and even long church services spike dramatically in summer months, and why hospital emergency departments see a genuine measurable increase in orthostatic collapse cases during heat waves, concentrated heavily among the elderly, whose blood vessels are less responsive and whose baroreceptor reflexes have weakened with age. But here's the catch. 3 to 15 minutes is actually the optimistic window. That range assumes a healthy adult in normal conditions. Real life isn't that. For people on certain blood pressure medications, for people who are dehydrated, for pregnant women whose circulatory systems are already working overtime, and for the elderly whose blood vessels and reflexes respond slowly, that window can shrink dramatically. Some people begin experiencing dangerous drops in blood pressure after standing still for only a minute or two. This matters enormously when you look at who is actually most at risk. It is not soldiers at parades who are young, trained, and closely supervised. It is elderly patients standing to receive communion. It is postpartum women standing at a hospital bedside. It is people standing in hot, crowded spaces like concerts and religious gatherings, where fainting is common enough that event medical staff plan for it as a near certainty rather than a rare emergency. And this is where it gets genuinely serious, not just uncomfortable. When someone faints in a crowd and there isn't room to fall, when they're wedged upright by other bodies or held up out of instinct by people around them who think they're helping, the safety mechanism that fainting is supposed to provide gets canceled. The brain doesn't get its horizontal reset. Blood pressure keeps collapsing. In documented medical case reports, this exact scenario, being held upright while fainting in a packed crowd, has contributed to deaths that would have been entirely preventable if the person had simply been allowed to fall and lie flat. So the threshold most people never think about, the moment your circulatory system quietly runs out of options, isn't happening on a mountain or in a war zone. It's happening at graduations, at concerts, in line at the DMV, anywhere a body is expected to stay still and upright for longer than its own blood flow can tolerate. Below that threshold, your body can compensate. It buys you time, quietly, invisibly, without you ever noticing the fight happening under your skin. Above it, no amount of willpower changes the outcome. The physics of gravity and blood pressure have already decided what happens next. And the honest, uncomfortable truth is this: the safest thing your body can do when it's failing you this way is fall down. And the instinct to stay standing, to power through, to not make a scene, to hold formation is often the exact thing working against you. Next time you're standing somewhere, at a ceremony, in a long line, in the heat, and your legs start to feel heavy or your vision starts to swim, now you know what your body is trying to tell you and why sometimes the thing you're fighting hardest to avoid, falling, is the very thing that would save you.